What is going on, guys? It's Jono, and today we're talking about a feature that is so powerful yet most people don't even realize it exists in Make.com. So take a look at this. In front of me, there's the Make.com website and it says connect anything, but it doesn't actually necessarily mean connect anything because they only have maybe a couple thousand native integrations into Make.com. You got HubSpot, LinkedIn, Webflow. If I were to scroll down here, there's thousands of other applications. But the reality is there's probably hundreds of thousands of different software applications out there. What happens if you come across something that you want to use, but it's not in Make.com? It doesn't mean just because it's not in Make.com, you can't access it, because you actually can. And there's two different ways that you can do it. And in this video, we're going to be talking about both ways that you can literally get anything that you want out of Make.com. But they both depend on one concept, which is called an API. And an API stands for Application Programming Interface. And the best way to explain what an API is to probably just give you an analogy instead. So imagine that you dress up, you get all fancy, you're super excited, you go out for dinner with some friends, okay? And at the restaurant, you order your meal. Maybe you order a Caesar salad, you order some pasta, you order some wine, okay? You are the API request. And in this analogy, you're requesting food. So the API request is the client or you, and you're asking for some food. And then the actual API process is the server that's frantically taking down all the notes and may end up screwing up your order anyways. I'm just kidding, not in this example. The API hopefully won't screw it up, but they'll write it down and then they're gonna go to the kitchen, right? So that's the API that's taking your order. And then they're gonna bring it to the kitchen. And then in the kitchen, you got the chefs that are cooking up the meal and preparing it, right? And that is the request being processed on the back end. So the back end is the kitchen. The front end is you asking the waiter. And then the waiter is like the server, the middleman that connects the two. So once the food is processed in the kitchen, they'll return it back to the API or the server, who will bring it back out to you. And then you'll get your response, your request response, right? And that's kind of really what an API request is. And if you think about it, I mean, that's essentially all that Make.com is too, because if you take a look at any example here, when you send a request to Make.com, I'm just going to unlink this for now, and I'm going to click run. What we're doing is, in this example, we're sending a request somewhere, right? In this example, we're sending it to Go High Level, which is my favorite CRM, by the way, and you should definitely get it in case you're wondering. I'm not paid to say that, by the way. I've just been using it for 5 years. It's not like I've been practicing that line for my entire life. I'm just kidding. But in this instance, the request is we're sending, to create a client and Go High Level. And then the response back is what we got here, which is actually a 400 runtime error, right? So you send the food to the kitchen, just like you're also sending this new client you got into your CRM, and then you're receiving back your food, or you're receiving back, in this instance, an error, right? And the only difference between a kitchen and an API is that a kitchen is much more sophisticated. So for me, what I always like to do, and I'm so guilty of doing this, is I'll always be torn between the salad and the fries. So I'll end up doing 50-50 and then getting garlic mayo on the side. And that's like my signature move, go to, love it every single time, no matter what. It's always a bit shameful because you'll always have to say so many things to the server and they'll be frantically writing it down. But anyways, an API request is not always that sophisticated. You can't customize everything you want with it. There's a very standard way of doing it. And if you venture too far outside of the scope of the request, it's going to return an error similar to what we got here, right? So we need to format that error properly and format it exactly in accordance with how the creator of that API was intending for it to be used. So what that means is, if we circle back here, if we're connecting into HubSpot, they have certain things you can do. You can create a client, you can update a client, you can delete a client, you can add a client to a workflow, you can send a client email maybe, right? Those are all very predefined actions you can take. But you can't be like, hey, can you, I don't know, maybe send like a postcard to the client. That just doesn't exist. You have to choose from their options what you want. And then once you choose from their options what you want, you have to give it the exact information it's looking for, or else it's not going to work. So in today's video, we're going to be covering APIs, secret backdoors into Make.com so that you can connect hundreds of thousands, like literally pretty much anything accessible on the web into make.com, as long as they have a public facing API, which means that they're willing to accept people connecting into their software, right? So as long as that's a condition that's met, then you can connect into it. We're going to be diving into it. Before we do, guys, please make sure to subscribe down below if you like content like this, because I will be releasing videos just like this one every single day. Make sure to hit the like button and the thumbs up. And also, guys, if you are just new to make.com, there is a link down below where you can get started. There is a 14-day trial and you can just test it out in the description below. Let's dive into it right now. Okay, so let's get started. In make.com, we're going to create a new scenario. And like I mentioned earlier in this video, there's two ways that we can access these secret doors. And I'm going to start with the easier way to do this, and then we'll move on to the slightly harder way. So let's take, for example, really almost any of these modules. I'm just going to type in go high level here because I'm going to use this example today. You have all these requests, right? You can watch for events, you can watch contact updated, search contacts, get a contact, create a contact, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff. But the reality is that this is only a fraction of what their API actually allows you to do. If we go into go high level API, and we dive into this, there's probably double, maybe even triple the amount of stuff that you can do here. So if I'm just gonna log into their API just to show you guys this. So there's all of these additional use cases that we can do. We have calendars. Do they even have They don't even have calendars in here. Campaigns, companies, content. Like, look at how far I'm scrolling down, and then these are like nested. Right? There's so many freaking, you can't do invoices here. You can't do, like, what else can you not do? I mean, there's a million things in here. I'm still scrolling, and these are just folders, right? With another like 10 things that you can do within them. So point is that there's a million and one things that you can do and go high level, but in make.com, they don't give you access to everything that you can do. They just give you access to maybe the top 10 things you can do. However, with that being said, they do have this nifty little tool down here called Make an API Call. And this performs an arbitrary authorized API call. And the key word here is authorized, right? And that's a really important keyword there, because when you're making an authorized call, it means that it's already authenticated your account. So what that means is that when you say you want to update a calendar and you send a request through that arbitrary API call, it's already authenticated you with Go High Level, so that you don't have to do all the complicated software engineering on the background to essentially prove to Go High Level who you are and why you are the right person and how you deserve access and actually obtaining that, right? Because that's a pretty complicated workflow to build out. But with this, you just actually can pre-authenticate yourself and then really be able to have access to do whatever you want. So the first thing we're going to do here is an API call. And I'm just going to do something really simple. I'm just going to go into contacts, and even in contacts, there's so many different things we can get here. We can get, put, delete, post. There's a lot of stuff. Now, what this means, just for you guys to understand, is a get method. These are ways that you can handle requests, right? There's typically 4 main requests, but there's a lot more than just 4. But the 4 main ones are get, where you're going to go high level in this example and you're saying, hey, can you give me information on this client? So for example, in your make.com scenario, maybe midway through the scenario, you're like, crap, I need to get access to this client's information because I need to have information on this client to process the rest of this workflow. Well, you can use the get method to maybe find that client based on their ID, right? Or based on their email or their phone number. And then you can get that information midway through the workflow and then use that for the rest of the workflow. A delete is simply you just delete that client, right? So you say, hey, I no longer want this client in the CRM, they're deleted. Post is essentially saying you're pretty much creating, right? So you're sending for the first time and you're adding to a system, right? And then like your CRM, like go high level. And then put is very similar to post, in which put is you're essentially updating what's already there, right? So you're updating an existing client. So those are the four main methods, right? But let's just say that we want to post a new client into Go High Level. Well, we can of course do this through their API, but I'm just going to make it really simple for now. But we can also do, like they have an existing extension here just to create a client, but we're just, as an example, going to do the same thing, but instead we're going to do it through their actual API arbitrary call. So in the documentation, you'll need to figure out what exactly it is that you want to actually request. And in this case, we're just going to say, create a contact here, right? And in this API documentation, this might look a little bit scary to you guys, but it essentially is just walking you through exactly what you need to do to, complete the request that you're looking to do. So in this create, we have post, which is we're creating something, right? And it's saying, hey, just send the information to here, right? And this is kind of like what we need to put in the headers. And the headers are usually where you authorize your account, right? And you give it certain information that is required. And usually the documentation here will actually tell you what you need to do, which is down here. In this case, it's telling you this is what you need to put in the headers to essentially authorize yourself and get the right version in this case, and the right file format, all that kind of stuff. And then the body is the information you're looking to update. Like the first name down here could be Roseanne, last name could be Dio. The cool thing is because we've already authorized, we actually don't have to go through this headache of doing this, right? So in the request object, you can choose, usually there's a lot of different softwares that you can choose, but I'm just going to use the HTTP module because this is all we need essentially to authenticate it through this make an API call here. And we'll start off by just putting in the URL. So quite simply, all we have to do is just copy this URL up here and then paste it in here. We'll change the method to post because we want to post a client. And in the header section, usually if you didn't have authentication already, you'd have to enter this in. But because we're doing the arbitrary API call through the module here, which means we're already pre-authorized, we don't have to worry about that, which is super cool. And then in the query key, we're actually going to ignore the query key where we don't have to add anything to that. But essentially what the query key would be is just adding additional information onto a URL so it can pull it in on the server. If, like, for example, you could add in this URL up top here, you could be like name equals Jono. And if they're looking for the name, it will pass in the value Jono, right? So that's kind of like what a query key is. But the body, we're just going to enter into sample data here. So in here, we're going to come down and copy all of this in here. And I don't need to add everything here. I just want to add like the first name, last name, email, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to delete all of this. Now, one thing to note here, which will drive you up the wall if you don't know JSON very well, is that when you're structuring JSON, the last line can never have a comma at the end of it, or else it'll always draw an error. So just make sure to delete that. And we're going to go in and just structure this guy. So I'm just going to call this test at test.com. And then I'll name it after myself, Jono Catliff, and then Jono Catliff. Okay, so we have the data here and everything looks good to go. So we can give this a try. We're gonna click OK, and this may give us an error. Let's see. Okay, so it's giving us an error with a 404 error in particular. And the reason why it's likely giving us that error is because of right here, right? So it says enter a relative path to this location. So I actually shouldn't be putting in this location because it already knows to enter that in. So I can just delete it and it gives us an example of what we should put in here. So I'm just going to put /contacts because what's happening behind the scenes is this has already been included in here, right? So we don't have to add that. We just have to add the endpoint, which is contact. And there's a lot of different endpoints here. This is contacts, but if we go into companies here and we get a company, this would change to companies instead of contact now. If we went to campaigns, it would change to likely campaigns here instead of contact, right? So you can always change this up. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to run this. And we have another error. The token does not have access to this account. So I'm just going to take a look and see what's going on here, because a lot of the times there is going to be errors that arise here. And I have actually figured it out. We're pretty much good to go here. But in this error, it says 403. It says we don't have access to this location. So in this body, I put this location ID down here. And this is not actually, like, this is just straight from the API documentation here, where it just gives us like a boilerplate location ID here. So in this case, we just have to fill in the information properly based on what it is that we're looking for. So I'm going to put in my location ID, and then we'll try this one more time. And now I've gone ahead and I've created that contact, right? And once again, like, using Go High Level, we don't just have to use create a contact. There's a million and one things here that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. So using these arbitrary API keys, it makes things so powerful because you can really unlock a secret side of make.com that you didn't have access to before, right? Think about it from their perspective. They're frantically trying to add as many things as possible, right? And they're trying to focus their time on the 20% of work that delivers 80% of the results. But if you're like a mile deep in a software and you need access to every single piece of functionality, well, that's not going to cut it, right? So using something like this is going to really help you maximize your ability to automate all the processes that you want to have automated. Now, of course, this doesn't just, this isn't just like localized to Go High Level. If we typed in something like ClickUp to, and we went to more tasks, we scroll all the way to the bottom, and you can also, once again, make an arbitrary API, an authorized API call, right? So you can do this for pretty much every single native API integration, which means that this is so freaking powerful. Now, there's one more other example that I want to use in this workflow here, and that is the HTTP module. So let's say that instead of connecting into just another application like Go High Level that you already have access to, maybe you want to plug into something that doesn't even have a module at all, right? Maybe there's not even an arbitrary API key that you can call. And that's where the HTTP module comes in, and we can simply just make a request. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can make a request to, but I'm actually just going to show you guys my favorite request that I use. Literally, I think I probably use this at least a good 300 times a day. So I'm going to log in here to my account in Go High Level. So I've just logged in. I skipped over there because there's a bit of loading, and I'm going to go ahead and create a workflow, right? So I'm kind of containing this all to Go High Level here, but you can really extrapolate on any software application you want to use. We have an add to new trigger here, right? And let's say we put in an inbound webhook, which means that we're sending information into this. Well, we can use the HTTP module to send information over here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlink these. I'm going to move the trigger over to the HTTP module, and I want to send information from here into an arbitrary URL like this, right? All we have to do is copy this URL, and we need to paste it in here. We're going to change the method to post because we want to send information to that URL. And we don't have to put any headers in here. The body type, we can choose whatever we want to, but I'm going to choose application like a form, and we can just add in fields. And in here, I'm going to say email equals, test@gmail.com. We can click OK, and we'll run this. And now we've officially sent information from here into this workflow here. We can fetch the results, and we just got that result coming in here, right? So we have the email listed here, test@gmail.com, with all this other stuff as well. And now that we're in Go High Level, we can use the data that we just collected here, and then we can, save this trigger, and then we can do whatever we want in Go High Level. We can automate whatever it is we want. We just create a new contact here. This is a bit outside the scope of this video, but I'm just sharing with you guys how this works. We'd load in the inbound trigger email here, and that would create a new contact based on the email that we sent from this HTTP module here. And then we could do one of any 70, 60, 70, 80 different automations that they have in Go High Level to automate your CRM. So that's just one example of how you can use these HTTP modules to connect data into your CRM like Go High Level. For example, another few things you could do here is maybe you're using make.com and you just have one kind of workflow that you need to use Zapier for example. Well, you could use this to send data into Zapier and then trigger Zapier, right? So if I went into Zapier right now and I logged into my account, when this eventually decides to take 2 million years to load. Oh man, wow, Zapier. You really got to step up your page load speed here. This is like cringe-worthy. I'm literally dying over here. Okay, I'm just gonna pause this video and come back when this is officially loaded. Okay, so 2 years later, I don't know, do I have wrinkles on my face now? Is my skin not the same as it once was? Like that, literally, I haven't eaten in like 2 years, just waiting for this thing to load. Anyways, I'm committed to finishing this video, so we'll proceed onwards, despite the fact that Zapier took decades to finish. So the trigger could be like a webhook here, okay? And maybe, for example, we have this webhook and we want to catch a raw hook here, and we could just send information from make.com right in here. So for example, we could send this and then click OK, run once, and we should receive that here. So we can test the trigger. And we just got this request in here, which is super cool, right? Another thing you could do is maybe you want to start another workflow in make.com. Well, you can do the same thing. Instead of sending it to Zapier, you can send it to another webhook in make.com to trigger that webhook. And there's multiple ways you can do that, but that's just another way that you can potentially start another workflow in make.com in case you were wondering about doing that as well. So that's essentially it, guys, for this video. That's a really quick overview of how you can use APIs in make.com to access all these other platforms that you really can't natively interact with just through the interface in make.com, right? The native applications. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, make sure to subscribe down below. Give me a thumbs up and also leave any questions you have in the comment section down below. Thanks, guys, and have an amazing day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.